Hello, hello. Hi there. I am live. Hmm. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good night. Please help me share a lot. I'm afraid something is happening with my scrolling on Facebook, and I'm not able to reach all the groups I want to reach. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Kay. I don't know what interference you're getting. I don't think it's from me, however, but it may be. Can't always tell. There we go. My sound should be all right now. I see Dawn Lorraine McGrath is here. Hi, Dawn. Haven't seen you for a while. Romano, hi. Kay, thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to stop sharing the promo. Here we are. We're on. I can't tell. Like last night, says Deborah. I don't know what's happening here. How's my sound? I'd appreciate it if you can tell me, since Kay says sounds good to me. Good, Kay. That's good. Maybe I can do some more sharing here. Well, I've got a watch party playing here, but I guess I don't have the stream. I don't have my own stream. I don't know what's happening to Facebook these days. They're making various changes. It's all very confusing. All I'm concerned about, of course, is to get back to my original live stream. Avril says just the speech delay is still happening, but that's not a problem. Don't know what's causing that. Let me check. Oh, yeah. It's going through the speakers. That's why. It's not supposed to be going through the speakers. It's only supposed to be going through my mic. Okay, says it's just going through the mic now. How's that? Should be better. Kay says, I have a question, Joe. If we get enough but progressives in Congress and the Senate and Biden gets elected, can the Congress and Senate pass Medicare for all if he vetoes it? And can they override his veto? It depends on if they have a sufficient number, of votes to override the veto. I think what you need to override a veto is a 2/3 vote of both houses, but it also might be 3/4. I better look it up. I've forgotten that vital piece of information. It is a vital piece of information. I don't see that happening with respect to Medicare for all, but if people get a bipartisan deal on something, if the Senate and the House were to hammer out a deal on COVID relief right now, there would probably be enough people in the House and enough people in the Senate who would go for it, that if Trump were to veto it, they would become very annoyed and they would override his veto and it would become law anyway, whether he liked it or not. So I do think that can happen. I do. May not happen, but I do think it can happen. Avril says, no, the delay is still happening. I wonder what can cause the delay. I really wonder. I don't understand that at all. I keep checking my speakers. All sound is now going through my mic, which of course is in a position to get my speech directly and quickly. So I don't know what is happening. Hi, Lana. Hi, Dale. How are you, Dale? Haven't seen you for a while. I hope you've been well. Kay says, I know they do that in states, but wasn't sure if they can in the Fed. Oh, yes, yes. The vetoes by presidents have been overridden many times. Though that hasn't happened to Trump yet, surprisingly. So, some reason StreamYard is not picking up comments. I don't know why. StreamYard normally picks up comments. I'm seeing the comments on Facebook now, okay, but I'm not seeing them on StreamYard. And Lana says, hi, Dr. Joe. Hi, all. Doesn't matter how many years I know Lana. Okay, I think she'll always call me Dr. Joe. Avril says, welp, I suppose it's this device. Which device? Which device? I've silenced the Facebook sound. Sorry, I hadn't silenced the Facebook sound. How are things now? I just silenced the Facebook sound. I thought I'd done that before, but it seems to have come back. So maybe the delay is gone by now. I hope so. Anyway, I want to get to the business of the day because there's quite a bit of good business for the day. So let's start. And I'm going to share a screen for you. There's nobody here. I suppose there's a lot going on tonight. That's more important than this particular video. This is probably the most important topic of the evening, at least in the short run, not in the long run, of course. But with the survival of organized human society, quote unquote, at risk, a new campaign rallies progressives to vote Trump out. It's written by Jake Johnson for Common Dreams, and it publicizes the Vote Trump Out website and campaign, which is being conducted by the Roots Action Group. The co-founders are Jeff Cohn and Norman Solomon, two supporters of Bernie Sanders continuously. They know Bernie very well, with the goal of boosting by voter turnout by progressives in swing states that could play a decisive role in November. Advocacy group rootsaction.org on Wednesday launched a grassroots campaign aiming to prevent another disastrous 4 years of President Donald Trump's, quote, war on truth, on decency, on our planet, and on working people. The group is arguing that while progressives have major substantive differences with Joe Biden on a number of key issues, supporting a Democratic nominee in swing states is the only means we have to defeat Trump. as progressives and leftists, we're not going to Biden, I'm quoting now, but we're also clear-eyed about where things stand, unquote. And the campaign's mission statement reads, quote again, "We have a moral responsibility to defeat Trump," unquote. Quoting some more, "If Biden wins, we'll be at his door on day one, demanding the kinds of structural reforms that advance racial, economic, and environmental justice," the statement continues. But before that, it's clear what we have to do this November. We have to hashtag vote Trump out in swing states, unquote. Well, for my part, I would hope that we continue to be on Biden's door for the whole of this campaign, demanding that he run on the kinds of structural reforms that advance racial, economic, and environmental justice right now. I think we have to be at his door continually. I understand the need to vote for Biden over Trump, but we'll get into that, okay, in just a minute. But the point here is we must never stop the push for structural reforms. We must never stop the work for progressive candidates who have a chance to win the Congress in this campaign, to get a much, much larger group in the Congress, perhaps a group sufficiently large to swing the balance towards much more progressive reforms and changes in our system. We have to have that. We can't wait. Very aggressive moves to manage the climate crisis have to occur beginning in January of 2021. There is no more time to wait. There is no more time to waste. We should have done it yesterday. We were greatly set back by the Trump election. Now, I don't agree the Trump election was the progressives' fault. I think the Trump election was Hillary Clinton's fault. I think the responsibility has to be laid very clearly at her feet. That said, in retrospect, it's quite clear that we would have made much more progress under a Clinton administration than we've made under a Trump administration. But we'll go into that later, too. Jeff Cohn and Norman Solomon, co-founders of Root Action, which backed Senator Bernie Sanders in the 2020 presidential primary, said in a statement that, quote, "The general election is far less about Biden than it is about Trump, the most dangerous president in modern U.S. history, who opposes virtually every policy and principle that the progressives are fighting for," unquote. Endorsed by world-renowned linguist and activist Noam Chomsky, Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, Code Pink co-founder Medea Benjamin, Labor leader Roseanne DeMauro, former head of the NNU, that is the nurses, Medicare for All activist Hattie Barkan, and other national progressive figures. The new initiative offers social media toolkits to help the residents of the swing states of Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin engage progressive voters and drive up turnout in those states. And there's a little chart. Would you rather protest net zero carbon emission standards by 2030, or protest authoritarian fascism from which we may never recover? And the answer is pretty plain. Solomon said to Politico that Roots Action has also hired full-time organizers in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin to assist the campaign with Election Day less than 3 months away. Chomsky said, I live in the swing state of Arizona. I'd vote for a lamppost to get Trump out. Chomsky is featured in the initiative's launch video. And by the way, before this is all said and done, he may be voting for a virtual lamppost to get Trump out, because Joe Biden may be approaching that state in the not too distant future. I won't play the clip. I go on though, okay, quote, another 4 years of Trump may literally lead us to the stage where the survival of organized human society is deeply imperiled, unquote, Chomsky says in the clip. Quote, it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter whether you like Biden or not. That's your personal feelings. Irrelevant. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is what happens to the world. We have to get rid of Trump and keep the pressure on Biden, just as Sanders and associates have been doing, unquote. The Vote Trump Out website includes a frequently asked questions section countering potential left-leaning arguments against voting for Biden, from objections to voting for the lesser of two evils to the claim that there's no real difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So let's go to that fact question. Let's stop sharing this and start sharing the fact. Now let's go through the fact. Let's go through the fact. Why Trump has to go. He's a threat to our planet. Trump has moved our climate closer to the brink of collapse with an aggressive expansion of fossil fuels that ignore science in order to line the pockets of his campaign donors. He's a threat to our economy. Trump's disastrous response to COVID has helped to plunge our country into recession, and his systematic dismantling of social safety nets may lead us to a depression. His policies relentlessly push wealth and income upward towards the top 1%. He's a threat to immigrants. Trump has used racist scapegoating to terrorize immigrant communities, separate children from their families, and turn back the refugees this country once welcomed. He's a threat to women. Trump has methodically worked to limit access to birth control and abortion, has revoked protections against pay disparity and sexual harassment in the workplace, and has enthusiastically and repeatedly denigrated women on a national stage. Women's rights are further threatened by his Supreme Court and federal court nominees. Let me make this a little larger for you. There we go. He's a threat to our health. Trump has overseen the least competent response to COVID of almost any government, resulting in the highest number of deaths worldwide and a continuously inadequate level of testing. That is a true statement. He is a threat to our democracy. Trump has assailed essential institutions and traditions, including the separation of powers, the free press, an independent judiciary, the impartial delivery of justice, safeguards against the corruption, and most disturbingly, the right to vote. And that doesn't even mention the numerous violations of the Emoluments Clause and the domestic Emoluments Clause, the bars in the Constitution against enriching yourself while holding high office in this land. He has violated his oath up and down, and Nancy Pelosi made a terrible error for not impeaching him long ago for his violations of the Emoluments Clause. She should have started proceedings for that. The first day she came back into office as the Speaker in 2019, in January of 2019. She really was guilty of political malpractice in not doing that. Had she done it, she might have saved a lot of lives from COVID just through that particular act. Of course, she had no way of knowing COVID was coming, but Trump was obviously dangerous. We knew that after the first 2 years. He had to go. She should have moved aggressively against him in January of 2019. It's one more reason why she should be displaced as Speaker as soon as possible. I live in a state where, he's a threat to our national character. Trump's bullying, lying, name-calling, and vindictiveness have compromised our national discourse, and they continue to do so every day, and sown deep divisions where we could be finding common ground. Next, I live in a state where one major party or the other will win by 20 percentage points. You're telling me I can't vote for the Green Party? And the answer to that question is not at all. If you live in New York or California, for example, where the election will not be close, you can vote for the Green Party or abstain without jeopardizing the effort to defeat Trump. If you live in a swing state, however, including Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Maine, Michigan, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, Wisconsin, or Nebraska, CD2, so they name the swing states right here and right now. As of now, these are the swing states. Okay, the choice to vote for the Green Party or to sit out the election increases the chances of Trump winning a second term, plain and simple. That's why our campaign is laser focused on engaging progressive voters in swing states. But while you're at engaging them to come out and beat Trump, they also need to be engaged to elect people to Congress who are progressives, because it's not simply about voting for Joe Biden. It's also for voting for Green Party candidates, and for other progressives. And the reason for that is we have the choice of Trump or Biden now, because when Trump won in 2016, the progressives did not embark at that point on an all-out attempt to create a new third party, a people's party. It should have been done then. We had 4 years to do it. We did not do it. So we are to blame, in part, for having the choice between Trump and Joe Biden now. If we had built an alternative party, we would not have that choice. We would have a better choice if we had built a third party that was powerful in those 4 years. Then the Democratic Party might well never have nominated Joe Biden. They might never have dared to nominate Joe Biden. If we assume that Bernie would have stayed inside of the Democratic Party and the Green Party had gained ground in these 4 years, and the Green Party had put some of its own people in Congress, then I think the Democratic Party would have had little choice but to go for Bernie Sanders if they expected to defend their party, okay, and its infrastructure. So, in part, we're to blame because we're being faced with this particular choice. It didn't have to be this way. It has been this way. Let us learn this lesson and let us not only go for Joe Biden now, okay, but let us even now begin building out the effort for a People's Party so we're not faced with a choice like this in 2024. How can you endorse Joe Biden given his record of centrist neoliberalism? The hashtag Vote Trump Out campaign does not endorse Joe Biden. That's because our effort is not about supporting Biden. It's about defeating Trump, advocating that swing swing state swing state progressives vote for Biden is in no way an endorsement of his policies or history. It is simply an acknowledgement that the alternative is to re-elect an unabashed white supremacist and quasi-fascist. He's not a quasi-fascist, he's an out-and-out fascist who will be even more dangerous if given a second term. In the words of Noam Chomsky, who lives in a swing state, quote, "I'd vote for a lamppost to get Trump out." Isn't a vote for Trump against our progressive values? The answer: our values are firmly grounded in improving the material well-being of actual people, particularly marginalized people. It is clear that for poor and working class people, for people of color, for LGBTQIA plus people, for immigrants, for refugees, for students, and for people with disabilities, life will be far harder under a Trump administration than a Biden administration. In this way, voting for Biden in swing states in order to defeat Trump is a reflection, not a contravention of our values. Voting is fundamentally a strategic act, and we are pursuing the strategy most likely to protect vulnerable people from 4 more years of bigotry, exploitation, and repression. And we will be ready and organized on day one to hold the Biden administration accountable. We should start holding them accountable now by constantly, critically evaluating what they're doing and suggesting alternatives to make their campaign stronger. I did a short video on that, and I posted it early today. You'll find it on my Facebook site, and you'll find it on my YouTube site, okay, as well. Next, but it violates my personal moral beliefs to vote for Biden, given his record on issues I care deeply about, such as corporate greed, racial injustice, and war. Shouldn't I cast a moral vote? And the answer to that is, when it comes to elections and voting, we believe the moral choice is not what makes us feel good or pure or superior as individuals. The moral choice should be based on what is best for others, especially the most vulnerable among us, and for the planet and future generations. In swing states, we believe the moral vote is to vote Trump out. The implication here is that in non-swing states, The moral vote may well be to vote for Green Party for president in the non-swing states. Now, by the way, if we elected Green Party people in all the non-swing states, that would probably be an electoral majority, wouldn't it? It would probably give UK an electoral majority in electoral college. The only problem is, in the non-swing states, we're unlikely to beat the dominant party. California and New York, for example, are locked up, for Democrats. We might be able to create a good showing for the Green Party in those particular states, and that would be very, very good. But it wouldn't do more than make a small dent in Democratic support. Still, it's worth doing. It's a moral vote. There is no real difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. That's the next fact item. We strongly disagree. For every undocumented family seeking asylum, for every woman seeking access to reproductive health care, for every young person fighting to avert climate catastrophe, for every parent afraid of gun violence at their children's schools, for every working class family hoping for some relief from the medical and economic fallout of the coronavirus. Life will be very different under a Biden presidency than under 4 more years of Trump. And crucially, Biden is movable, they say. We've already shown that with mass pressure, we can push him to support more progressive policies. Well, that's true. Yes, we have already shown that we can push him to verbalize these policies and to tell us he supports them. But Biden is a pretty good liar, too. He's not as good, I should say, he's not as often a liar as Trump. In that sense, he's not as good a liar as Trump. But he lies very frequently, and he lies to us very, very frequently about what he would support in becoming the president of the United States. We can push him to support the policies we favor, and he may state that we favor them. But then the game will be, when he gets into office, to remind him that he said he favored them. Is he going to go back on his word? And we can push and push and push and protest and push. How much we'll get from him is another matter. But this game is not initially about what we would initially get from him. It's about building that alternative movement that Bernie Sanders left in the lurch, about building that movement again. We have seen, since Bernie's retirement from the field, that the campaigns to elect people to Congress who are progressive has gotten the movement going again, feeling optimistic again, feeling that it's got some influence, that it can make a difference again. And that's very important. We have to keep that going. And the only way to keep it going, or one way to keep it going anyway, is to push Biden and push him and push him and push him. And as I say in my short video today, this will only make Biden stronger. With a Biden presidency, a disciplined and mobilized left could extract significant victories. With another presidency of Donald Trump, the left would have few options and could face new levels of government repression. Our democracy, our planet, and our human rights would continue to sustain enormous and potentially irreparable damage. That is an absolutely true statement. We're seeing the damage already. We're seeing it every day. the damage to the post office, the damages to immigrants, the damages to our local communities, the damages to our environment and our climate, the damages to our democracy, our federal system, our rights to protest, to assemble, to exercise freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly. All these are damaged by Trump. And the question, why should I vote for the lesser of two evils? Let's just burn it down. With only decades left to avert climate change catastrophe, I think many of us would argue 1 decade left, an economy teetering on depression, and a viral epidemic still uncontained, the burn it all down approach is almost certain to result in enormous suffering, especially for the most marginalized in U.S. Society and across the globe. With so much at stake, the left cannot abandon the electoral arena. We have a responsibility to contest that, to contest in that arena. We have a responsibility to win. Okay. And I largely agree with all of these statements. I do think we have to work as hard as we can to vote Trump out. That is very, very important. It's the most important thing that we can do right now, is to vote him out. Let's go back to the Common Dreams article, however. Oh, sorry, I got rid of that. So I think I've said what I had to say, okay, on the rest of this. I don't think it's enough just to participate in voting Trump out. I think we have to be very serious about continuing to build the Not Me, Us movement all through this time and getting it ready this time for 2024 to be a real factor in national politics by 2024. We need to have people who are part of the movement, okay, who are in Congress. We need to have people part of the movement who are packing local offices. We need to have people who are part of the movement who are contending for the presidency. All these things are essential. We have to build that movement starting now. There is no more time. There is no more time. So, I guess I've indicated that I'm for this movement. I think it's important, okay, to vote for Biden. What about the argument, which you hear a lot, okay, nowadays, and it's a compelling argument. At some time, we have to stop taking the crap that they're handing us, because every time we vote for one of them, then they get reinforced in the behavior of never making any compromises with us. They get lost in the idea, in the end, we will vote for whoever they want us to vote for. And they keep on moving further and further to the right. and we have no means to stop it because in the end we cannot say no to them when it comes to voting. This is a good argument, but it assumes that we are not going to build our own institutional alternatives in the time between elections. We can't say no to them without the institutions. We can't say no to them without an alternative party to go to. We need that third party. We've got to build it from the Greens, or we've got to build it with some other institutional framework. But we need to have an alternative that we begin to walk to. During these next 4 years, we have to be at Joe Biden's door on day one. And also on day one, we have to be building the alternative, the left party, the People's Party. Our goal has to be to make the Republicans a non-existent party, and to make the Democrats the right party, the rightist party. Let the Republicans disappear. Let the Democrats get what they want, which is to hobnob with the rich and the corporates all the time, and to be the new right-wing party. They're acting like it already. It's not a real big evolution for them. But we don't get that evolution until we build that the third party. So, what I'm saying is, we don't stop getting forced into this situation where it's self-destructive not to vote for the Democrat by handing the presidential election to a fascist. That's even more self-destructive. What we have to do instead is build that third party. And we have to not any longer fool with the democratic framework. Let congresspeople and other progressives who run for lower offices as Democrats, let them play with their party. But meanwhile, let us build the alternative party. Those Democrats who are progressive, such as the members of the Squad, will, if they're not successful in the Democratic Party taking control of it, they will in the end come over to our new party. And if they are successful in taking over the Democratic Party, so much the better. Then we can talk about a merger of the two parties. But we'll do best if there is this third party alternative. We will do best at this point. Okay, so let's get on to COVID. The mess in COVID. This article appeared in Common Dreams. It's by Jake Johnson. It was called Taking Taxpayers for a Ride. Moderna to charge $32 to $37 a dose for COVID-19 vaccine developed entirely with public funds. I mentioned that in my last stream in passing. I want to go over it in a little more detail here because, of course, it is entirely reprehensible. Is it not? Yes. There's a picture of a medical syringe being displayed on the screen. And the news has broke that the company's plans are to charge between $32 and $37 per dose for a potential COVID-19 vaccine. Okay, so do you know how much it costs? The cost, of an oral polio vaccine for people, of one dose of oral polio vaccine for people, cost 15 cents. Quote, taxpayers are paying for 100% of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine development. All of it, Peter Mabarduk, director of the Access to Medicines program at Public Citizens, said in a statement, quote, yet taxpayers may wind up paying tens of billions more to Moderna to buy our vaccine back if it proves safe and effective. Well, actually, we're not even buying our vaccine back. What we're doing is buying doses of the vaccine from them in perpetuity. It's not that the government is buying ownership of the vaccine back. They never should have given them ownership of the vaccine. They should have made a deal that would have ensured the government control of the vaccine with the objective of making the vaccine freely available to people who wanted it. Obviously, the objective here is not to make a profit for Moderna. That may be its objective. But our objective is to eradicate the pandemic. We can't have people unable to get the vaccine because they can't afford it. And people will hesitate at $35 to $37 a dose. The clinical trial of the vaccine is expected to enroll about 30,000 adult volunteers who do not have COVID-19. Dr. Anthony Fauci says that results from early-stage clinical testing indicate that the investigational mRNA-1273 vaccine is safe, and immunogenic, supporting the initiation of a phase 3 clinical trial. He gave a statement on this last week. That cost of $32 to $37 a dose, for Moderna, is 60% more on the low end than the Pfizer price of $19 and $19.95 per dose agreement with the U.S. government. And that, by the way, is too high. Moderna notes the price would be lower for larger volume agreements. And they also point out the price would go up after the pandemic is over. So if you should by chance get it after the pandemic is over, you'll have to pay even more. How much will you have to pay? I don't know. Maybe they'll raise the price then to $750 a dose. Unless there are price controls on it. Under pressure, advocacy groups to publicly disclose how its potential vaccine is being financed. What they said to Axios that is Moderna, said to Axios on Wednesday that U.S. taxpayers are providing 100% funding of the program. Yes, we are. Since April, the Massachusetts-based pharmaceutical company has received nearly $1 billion in taxpayer grants in order to develop a vaccine as part of the Trump administration's so-called Operation Warp Speed. The company got $483 million from the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority in April to support its vaccine development, CNBC reported. Quote, last month it announced it received an additional $472 million from the U.S. government, unquote. And Dean Baker wrote in his blog post on Wednesday that, quote, this funding paid for the research and testing, unquote, and, quote again, it also meant the government took all the risk. He said, if the vaccine turns out to be ineffective, the government will be out the money. Not Moderna. They didn't take any risk at all. Despite the fact that the price tag for their coronavirus vaccine is the highest yet announced by any corporation involved with Operation Warp Speed, Moderna CBO Stefan Bancel, I think it's probably Stefan pronounced, on Wednesday, characterized the cost as a discount during a conference call, announcing the company's massive second quarter revenue increase. The Public Citizen noted the absurdity of charging the public anything at all for a vaccine developed entirely with taxpayer funding. They want us to buy back a vaccine developed with our tax dollars. Actually, that may not be a bad idea. That is, to buy back the vaccine, have them actually produce the vaccine under contract. And then paying them a flat fee for manufacturing the vaccine. I'm not sure how that would work. Okay, exactly. Frankly, I'd like to get the federal government back into the business of actually manufacturing vaccines that are as vital, okay, as this one. I'd like the federal government, okay, to develop it with in-house scientists. I know they would do a very, very good job. I don't think the private sector would do this any better. And we wouldn't have these problems with extremely high prices for the vaccine. I think the whole thing should be nationalized. It would do better that way. So the price of vaccines, these vaccines, that's going to be another COVID-19 problem that we have to face and do something about. So next, we have testing problems. Dave Badayan talks about testing problems in his column today, which is entitled, Testing Delays Have Us Flying Blind. So we're going to learn about this blind flying. We're going to learn that we are flying blind. We're not going to learn how to fly blind and still be accurate. Well, there's a guy getting a nose swab. That's outside of Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. And, quote, if there wasn't as much testing, there wouldn't be as many cases, unquote. Donald Trump is fond of saying, and liberals are fond of laughing at him for saying that. But that's exactly what's been happening in recent days for a variety of reasons. I don't think it's funny anymore. The testing situation has been one of more or less consistent growth since at least late in April. But throughout August, it has suddenly fallen. Considering that mandatory tests for hospitals and some schools in special circumstances like the NBA bubble are ongoing, this is even worse since it means the general population testing is down even more sharply. Part of the problem is Hurricane Isaias, which has hampered normal functioning, but appears to be mainly a consequence of testing delays, which have become so widespread that many who might have been tested previously have given up. CVS claims the backlog is abating, but that doesn't square with the results we're seeing. It can now take weeks to get test results, at which point they become not terribly useful. It can also take almost as long to get a testing appointment in some parts of the country. If test results today gives you a snapshot of one population from yesterday, and another from 5 days ago, and another from 2 weeks ago, how can you construct a meaningful curve that tells you where case counts are now? How can you do contact tracing and expect people to remember who they interacted with 2 weeks ago? Just a few days of delay makes testing ineffective. And the countries that have successfully tested and contact traced and isolated and quarantined, that has been done because they had very quick testing, immediately followed by contact tracing. Very, very vigorous in their approach going on. Plus, it asks a lot to have those tested and awaiting results to isolate fully until they find out whether they have the virus. Plenty of people can't work from home, so this isn't even an option for them. The testing backlog appears to be a function of two things. One is consolidation among testing laboratories. Yeah, late-stage capitalism again. Where if you don't have a public university or large hospital lab nearby, most everything gets farmed out to Quest and LabCorp, who are at the breaking point. That Quest is busy acquiring smaller labs even now tells you the problem. The second is continued problems with the supply chain for key elements of the dominant testing kits, like reagents and these little pipette tips used in the process. Both of these outcomes are unforgivable. One is the result of decades of economic concentration. Parenthesis, do you know I have a book on sale about this? Unquote. I'm sorry, close parent. Sorry. While on the other, shouldn't still be happening months into the crisis. That we cannot onshore simple materials for production speaks to the hollowing out of our industrial base, and the long supply chains remain pretty clogged, even though globalization fans are trying to tout a victory. I don't know how anybody can tout a victory in this situation when we already have 161,000, maybe more fatalities. Let's do a brief check on those fatalities. Take the world Worldometer statistics and look at it. So we have 161,889 deaths in the USA as of today, and we're now up to 489 deaths per million, okay, in the US. We are rapidly approaching Chile now. We are 23 behind Chile. We have gained one on them since yesterday. And we are now 25 deaths per million greater than France, which has been stable at 464 for a very long time. And Brazil is about to overtake France in deaths per million. Of course, it has many more total deaths. It has 97,440 deaths. That's probably an undercount. But in any case, they have 458 deaths per million, and they'll be overtaking France, I suspect, in 2 or 3 days, and will then go by France. And the United States, probably in another week, will have overtaken Chile. I suspect that. Of course, we have a much longer way to go to get to Sweden. Sweden is at 571, holding steady since yesterday. And Italy is at 582. They're still a ways away from us, though. It may take us 3 weeks or so to get to that level. We will see. So here we are. Some experts have decided tests should be rationed, with those at low risk prohibited from getting one. That seems like a pretty bad idea if you want to have a consistent picture of community spread. The better option is to use cheaper tests, which might not be as accurate but can deliver the results quickly. Since more accurate tests lose their importance due to delays, the benefits of speed may matter more. There's also the option of pool testing, which can reduce the backlog and test 20 samples at once, and if all are negative, there's no need to go back and sample individually. Dave says there was a Lancet study found that same-day tests could prevent 80% of all transmissions if the positive subjects isolate. Tests that take 5 days to respond only prevent 5% of all transmissions. So false positives, isolating because of them, isn't necessarily a problem for public health, though false negatives are. Still, the good probably outweighs the bad here. But the good being the prevention of 80% of all transmissions. In the meantime, we're getting a terribly false picture. I've said all along, we're feeling around with this virus, like the blind man and the elephant. The testing regime right now is making us more blind and giving us less of the elephant to touch. It's fixable, but like everything right now, it's a challenge, a big challenge, especially for this administration, with its lack of leadership and its lack of brain power when it comes to doing anything that might solve a problem or that might be good. And Dave had a comment also on the economic crisis. He says, I'm going with no deal. He says, it's always darkest before the dawn, I guess. When you use the phrase, quote, trillions of dollars apart, unquote, it's usually not a sign that a deal is imminent. Such is the case with the coronavirus relief package. The Friday deadline, floated yesterday, was not a sign of optimism, but a threat. Mark Meadows told the Republicans in the Senate that there was going to be a break in the negotiations after that deadline. And Charles Schumer confronted him with that by but during the negotiations, and he lied about it. So it's going real well. Okay. A little over 29 million people were still receiving benefits as of the first week without a boost. The delay means that states, if there's ever an agreement, will have to switch back on the new benefits. That could take weeks as bills become due. But Pelosi beat sweeteners aside. We're in this mess because the individual side of the CARES Act was temporary and the corporate side was not. And Dave has said this again and again and again, and he's been right again and again and again, while the state and local aid was practically non-existent. If Pelosi is so all-powerful, she's also responsible for the dire state of affairs. She is. She needs to be voted out. We need to vote for Shahed. We need to vote for Shahed. We need to support Shahed. Even if she wins, she might be voted out as Speaker, of course, but we can't take a chance on that. We need to vote for Shahed, who's very progressive on the issues. Very progressive as far as the issues are concerned. But there, as with Trump, the objective has to be for progressives to get the person who's been blocking us and frustrating us and screwing things up out of office. Meanwhile, hazard pay for essential workers, a key part of the HEROES Act, has been completely forgotten. But those workers won't go away empty-handed. Indiana Senator Mike Braun is circulating a resolution, quote, expressing support for essential employees with disabilities or who are blind, unquote. Here's that critical language, which I'm told you cannot exchange to cover a rent payment. And he links to the critical language. And it's 133 without a bailout oversight chair, day 133. Speaking of bad legislation, a bunch of Democrats submitted a bill to increase diversity on the commission, on the Oversight Commission, with 4 new slots reserved for Black, Latinx, also Pacific Islander or Native Americans, unquote. Aside from erasing the identity of Commission member Bharat Ramamurthy, they had to lose the word Asian from diversity to do it. There's not even a chair. Maybe legislate that first, suggests Dave, and maybe so. Okay. I had one other, but it's getting late, and now I'm going to return to your comments. The one other I was going to go over, which I won't go over at this point, was Dave's column from yesterday, August 5th, which was about what it would take to make our schools safe for COVID-19. And Dave was doing an article based on what Randy Weingarten, is she still the head of the American Federation of Teachers? I forget. Yes, she is the perennial president of the American Federation of Teachers. She had a bunch of interesting things to say about it, so I commend the article to you. I've linked to it. I'm not going to go over it here because we don't have time. I am going to go back now to your comments. Avril says the sound is crystal clear at 9:09. I will now try and make sure that it is still crystal clear. It slipped away once again. so I've adjusted it again. Hopefully it is now crystal clear. Deborah says, A-OK, I guess. Alva says, just the speech delay is still happening, but that's not a problem. And Alva says, no, the delay is still happening. Kay says, I knew they do that in states, but wasn't sure if they can in the Fed. Kay says, no delay here. Lana says, hi, Joe. Hi, all. Avril says, well, I suppose it's this device. It could be the sound settings on your system, Avril. Avril says, greetings, but try earphones, see what happens. Avril says, a Samsung Galaxy. I have no idea how they behave. I know a lot of people are using them, like them very much. And Dolores says, hi, all. Hi, Dolores. And Stephen DeVore says, hi, everyone. Kay says, hi, Dolores. Steve says, hi, everyone. Kay says, hi, Stephen. Lana says, did you see that short video Jordan Chariton put out about Bonnie Frank and Cardaris, I think is her name? Isn't it Cardona? I think it's probably Cardona. Shelving the progressive agenda. Yes, I did see that. I wasn't a bit surprised. I knew that was in the cards. They both are lobbyists for their various groups. They have no integrity whatsoever. Steve says, hey, kids. Stephen DeVore says, no, I took a screenshot and we'll check it out later. Alva says, he's such a POS. I don't know the other POS, but I know she's one automatically since she is going along with it. No, she's a POS too. And Kay says, a Movement for a People's Party said they were going to protest the party platform at the convention. Well, if it helps them to build up the Movement for a People's Party, it's good, because we need that movement to finally turn into a People's Party and not just a movement for a People's Party. Lana says, Steve DeVore, it's infuriating, and Jordan said, Cardenas is a lobbyist. You can't make this stuff up. And Steve says, Jordan's been doing some great stuff. Yeah, he and Jen have been doing some great stuff. Jordan is very good at ferreting out secrets and things like that. And by the way, he just got engaged. They were showing off the diamond on a show earlier tonight. And Steve says, Trump's a threat to any and everything on planet Earth. Avril says she knew fascism was coming. Avril says he's the contagion. And Steve Wolfbrand said, sorry, Doc, but I think you should vote your conscience no matter what state you're in. Well, Steve, I don't have any objection to people who are voting their conscience. You will note, though, the argument that's being made by the people who want to support Biden is they're saying that when you live in a swing state, the moral choice, they're making a moral judgment, the moral choice when you live in a swing state, okay, is to vote for Joe Biden, because otherwise you will be increasing the chances that Trump will win, other things being equal. Of course, other arguments apply. Joe Biden could very well carry the swing state. Okay, so it's not like you're going to be solely to blame. No, you won't be solely to blame. Because, for example, if Biden were to announce right now that he's changed his mind, he's changed his long-standing view, and he is now fully in favor of Medicare for all. He supports the Jayapal bill that's been going through the House. He thinks that's even better than the Bernie bill that's going through the Senate, and that he will support that bill on day one when he gets into the presidency. And if the bill should cross his desk, he's going to immediately sign it, and he absolutely guarantees that. And if he says that to people He's going to get those swing states whether you vote for him or not, or I vote for him or not, or anybody living in a swing state votes for him or not, because there are going to be enough voters in the swing states who are going to say, okay, that tears it. I'm going to go for Joe Biden now. If he came out for that and he could bring himself to say Green New Deal and adopt more of Bernie's version of the Green New Deal, and if he could come out for free college, and he could come out for forgiving all of student debt and stop being stupid about it, he'd win in an effing landslide. He'd start carrying those freaking red states easily. Kay says, I have my doubts if Biden will win the Alabama, the North Coast, Ohio. Well, Ohio's not actually on the North Coast. I think it's the Alabama of the Rust Belt, but also the middle of Pennsylvania is known as the Alabama, certainly the Alabama of Pennsylvania. And Avro says, the orange sporange Ebola. Biden is trying to remember who he picked as VP. Going to keep Biden locked up in the basement till after the election. They need to do that. Did you see the latest performance in that interview? My God, that was awful. That was just awful. I mean, it wasn't even so much that he went off on the New York aggressive kick, against that guy. He should have just said, if he hasn't had any tests, he should have just said, I haven't had any cognitive tests because I haven't felt the need to have them. Sometimes I misspeak. That is true. It is partly due to age, and it's partly due to the fact that my stutter from the time I was a child seems to be coming back somewhat. But that stuff doesn't interfere with my decision making and doesn't interfere with my capability to be the president of the United States. I'm still the person with the most valuable foreign contacts and the most valuable contacts in Congress and the most valuable contacts in all the regions of the United States. I was the vice president for 8 years. I know what I'm doing. Misspeaking notwithstanding. If you want to go after somebody for cognitive decline, I suggest you look on the other side of the aisle, because the great big orange balloon is a perfect candidate for your psychoanalysis of cognitive decline. That would be a very good response for Joe Biden. Okay, but of course, he might be in too much cognitive decline to seize on something like that. I don't know. And Kay says, they probably better, Steve, laugh out loud. Steve DeVore says, who were their names again? Where's that fucking list? What were their names again? Where's that fucking list? I have the link. In the description. Go to the Vote Out Trump website and go to their description, and you will find the list of swing states, if that's what you're talking about. Let's hope the protests continue. Okay, if you're in Ohio, that's a swing state. Okay, if you're in North Carolina, that's a swing state. If you're in Florida, that's a swing state. If you're in Texas, I don't know if Texas is one of their swing states. If not, it should be right now. It looks very swingy at this point. Alva says, let's hope the protests continue, especially if Adolf Hitler remains in his Capitol Hill bunker. Has he got a golf course in his Capitol Hill bunker? Do you know? Steve Wolfbrand said, here's the deal, fact. Okay, says when people start getting evicted, there might be bigger protests. Yes, there might be bigger protests. Avos says, we'll get the revolution because being in the streets don't make you mean for nothing. If you go to jail for demonstrations, it'll be a blessing. Kay says, the Beat with Ari Melba had a great segment today all about Bass on his show. Hopefully it will put her back in the VP list. I hope so. Was it based on that piece I read the other day from Meyerson? It might have been. I'll take a look at it and see. Steve Dorr says Biden lies all the time. It's going to take a lot of effort to vote for him, but Trump simply needs to go away. He's dangerous and vindictive, and most important of all, he's a fascist looking to install a fascist government. And as someone once said, we don't fight fascists because we will win. We fight fascists because they're fascist. Now I pose a question to you. Which Chris said that? Which Chris said that? Steve Wolfbrand said, turns out Bernie was right after all. It wasn't about him. It's about us. We can do this without him. Not only can we do it without him, we have no alternative to do it without him. We have to do it with him as a small part of us, but not as the leader that we select, because he's now stepped out of that role. Someone else has to emerge. There will be a new leader at some point. And multiple leaders as well. And from among them, we will get a new, strong person. Who will prove to be a leader worthy of this moment. Kay says that is what he's been trying to teach us all along. Maybe the final teaching moment was when he stepped down. The damages to families due to COVID forcing children to school and infecting grandparents and the parents, all in the name of higher faux employment status to arm twist workers into drying for the Dow. And that must have been dying for the Dow. You must mean dying for the Dow. Chris Hedges said that. Yes, that is right. Chris Hedges said that. That's because he didn't want to hedge his bets. He wanted to say, we don't fight fascists because we will win. We fight fascists because they are fascists. And that's what this Vote Trump Out is about. Oh. Ah. Steve says we have the platform. Steve DeVore says we have the platform to do it also. Get a few fresh-faced but progressive candidates and go kick some ass. Well, we've been getting a few of them. We've been getting a few of them. But they keep going into the Democratic Party. They keep winning as members of the Democratic Party. We need to have some win as members of the Green Party and some win as members of the People's Party. Kay said, our Revolution Ohio went to protest at Portman's house today, too. Well, that's good because Governor DeWine has COVID, so you probably want to keep far away from his house. And Steve DeVore says that Cori Bush is a real slugger. Yeah, she is a real slugger. You're right. She is. She's a pistol. Susan Eldridge says, in 2024, Biden's VP pick will be running for president. Yes, she will. But whether she wins or not, that is another question. And Robert Medore says, being a better candidate, Mr. Sniffy sucks. Okay, Robert, I must confess I don't know who Mr. Sniffy is. So if you will enlighten me, I will appreciate it. Avril says, hopefully so will AOC. And Robert Medore says, let's build it from the independent side. It's 42%. The independent side is 42%, Robert, but it's also true that it's not a homogeneous 42%. The independents are basically made up of the non-Republicans and the non-Democrats and the non-Greens, perhaps. And that's the independent side. So it's just not, a homogeneous group. The People's Party will have to come from the independent side. It will have to come out of the independent side. Because the Democrats appear to be sticking with the Democrats, and the Republicans appear to be sticking with the Republicans. And the Republicans who are not sticking with the Republican Party are usually even worse than the Republicans who do stick with the Republican Party. Though there are some more independent-minded ones, I do agree, coming from the Republican side, they all seem to be getting on Crystal Ball show. On the Crystal Ball Sager Andretti show, Rising. Stephen DeVore says, I love when protests get personal, and camping in their driveway is pretty damn personal. Laugh out loud. He says, it's been a hard day. A friend and co-worker of 20 years. His father died of COVID this morning. Hearing a grown man sobbing is worse than hearing a woman crying. I'm not sure why it's worse, Steve. I'm not sure why it's worse, but I understand the feeling, because men aren't supposed to cry. Avro points out DeWine also has COVID. Seriously, how do you build a political party, Dr. Joe? Well, you build a political party Okay, there are different questions because there's different kinds, of political parties. And the difficult question is, how do you build a major political party? And we have to go back into history to study that, to see how the parties came about. Okay. It's really very instructive. The first parties basically coalesced around Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, John Adams, and they were the Federalists, as you know, the first political parties here. Okay. And then the political party that was organized to counter them was the Jeffersonians. Okay. They call themselves the Democratic Republican Party at first, because they were for a republic that would be more democratic. They looked on this as very decentralized. And the Federalists were for more central authority and for unity, and they represented more the financial interests in the country. So those were the first two parties, and people self-organized around those political parties. And so you had the two parties. But after not too many years, partly because Alexander Hamilton was killed in a duel, with Aaron Burr, as is sometimes said, he got himself killed in a duel. The Federalist Party began to fall apart. And Jefferson's party was enormously successful. And the Federalist Party gradually disappeared, in part because it was too class-based. It was too based in the property on the classes. And in the business classes and in the financial classes. And after a while, the Jeffersonians were beating them so badly that along about 1816, they simply disappeared. And then there was only one party in the United States, and it was the Democratic Republican Party, which was its actual name. I can't go through all this. It's too late. But basically what happened is that people split off that party, and they split into two blocks that could not agree. And the financial and commercial interest party became the National Republican Party that evolved into what was known as the Whig Party. And then there was the Democratic wing of the Democratic Republican Party. And they became the Democratic Party, okay, of Andrew Jackson. And that party has had a continuous existence until today. It is the forerunner of the modern Democratic Party. Okay, and the Whigs had very conflicting interests inside of their party. And so they couldn't resolve these particular interests. And they were getting increasingly unsuccessful at the polls, especially in state, in local elections. It was hard for them to get any unity on a platform nationally. And they weren't fulfilling the needs of the small farmers, of the homesteaders, of the people who were spreading out to the west. And so people who wanted to represent those interests came together and started having meetings. And they had a national convention. And in 1856, they formed the Republican Party. And they became the forerunner, of the modern day Republican Party. They took over the federal government in 1860, when Lincoln, was elected with a plurality, of votes. And due to the Civil War and the transformation, of the country, they became the dominant party for a very long time, through most of the period, from 1860 until the turn of the 20th century, and beyond, actually. They were the dominant political party, in the United States. People attempted to form third parties in that time. The Populist Party and the Progressive Party. And those were significant third parties that had a great influence on our politics. How were they formed? People self-organize around symbols, around tags, around ideas, around platforms, very much in the way the movement for a People's Party is organizing right now. But at some point, these movements had to run candidates for office. They usually start with candidates for local offices, state offices. They get into those. Then they start spreading into national office. It's gradual. It's very hard to do it in 4 years. But the Republicans did it in 4 years in the period from 1856 to 1860, during a time when there were the Democrats and the Whigs still existed, and the Democrats were breaking up based on regional interests, sectional interests. The Republicans succeeded in building the national party within 4 years. With our greater communications now, it can certainly be done that quickly again. We can have a political party by 1824. By 2024. But we all have to come together. We, the progressives, were interested in leaving the Democratic Party and forming a third party, have to come together. And we have to realize that it's going to be hard outside the Democratic Party. It's already hard. We had some pretty good candidates running for Congress in California in 2018. They were Green Party candidates. running in Southern California. Kenneth Mejia was one of them. I think he was running in what was it, the California 32nd or the 34th? Okay, I forgot. And Rodolfo Cortez Barragan, he was running in, I believe, the California 40th, if I recall correctly. He was running against Lucille Roybal Allard, whose family, she and her family have been in there forever, like for not as long, I don't believe, as Lacy Clay and his family in there, but really approaching that long, like in the 40s. They've been in the 40s. Okay, she and her father controlling that particular district. I don't even know if they live in the district anymore. Anyway, Rodolfo was a great candidate, okay, to replace her. But the people were sleeping. She wasn't representing their interest. It didn't really matter. They would not go for the Green Party candidate, specifically Rodolfo Cortez Barragan. And they wouldn't go for Kenneth Mejia either. He ran twice. He ran 2016 and he ran in 2018 too. And he couldn't win. Okay. And the Democrats had a Hispanic candidate in office who wasn't absolutely terrible, but he was pretty piss poor. And Kenneth really didn't come close. So it's up to people to say. In those districts, there was no danger of a Republican winning. It wasn't like if you voted for the Green Party that you were risking a Republican win. In fact, it was a situation where the Republicans had already been kicked out of the contest because they'd run in the primary and had not gotten the votes in the primary they had to get in 2018. Kenneth Mejia was running as a number 2 person in the primary, and Rodolfo was also running as a number 2 person, okay, in the primary, and they could not get there. They could not get there, even though a Republican didn't figure into it. So I hope I've answered the question. Didn't have all the time to spend on it I might like. And Robert Medor says, how about, you mean the Working People's Party? All the unions, all the folks, okay, at minimum wage, $7.25 and up. It's clear they need us. Yeah, the unions need us. I certainly think the People's Party is extremely pro-union. The Working Families Party is also pretty supportive, okay, of unions. But in many ways, the Working Families Party is too centrist. They often will betray a lefty person in order to support a centrist person. Kay says, but Governor DeWine hates Hare's Rump, I think, hates Trump, right? He was supposed to go to Rump's speech in Cleveland today. I'm wondering if his positive test was just a way to stay away from there. Oh, no, I think that, well, I'm not sure this is true, but I had the impression that he was tested in Cleveland before he saw Trump, and that's how they found he had COVID. I was under that impression. Steve says she will be president in less than 2 years, whoever she turns out to be. Well, let us hope Biden goes crazy at the last minute. and selects one particular old gentleman I might name. And Steve's going to say, forget it, forget it, forget it. Forget him, forget him. Kay says he might be a corrupt GOP, but he isn't too stupid, laugh out loud. Yep, but he's corrupt, all right. Avril says, betcha Kushner and Miller got investments in Moderna. Yeah, I think so. Steve says, there are people working on that, Stephen and Sheila Squiles. And welcome to you. I'm not sure I pronounced, I'm certain I did not pronounce your last name correctly. It's probably Squillace, but I apologize for my feeble attempts to learn how to pronounce your name. And anyway, welcome. And Sheila says, sickening candidate Biden for those of us who remember the Thomas hearings, and Biden is disgraceful. I agree. He's still disgraceful. He made some disgraceful comments today. He makes disgraceful comments a lot. He does. But he's not a fascist. How about Fauci and his daughters getting threatened? He had to hire bodyguards or similar. Shake my head. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, he's a government official. He doesn't have the money to hire bodyguards. I mean, it's not like he's a billionaire or something. I mean, I'm sure he's a millionaire, a few times over. He's earned high salaries in the federal government, for a long time. He probably has a house somewhere in the Washington area where houses are too high in price. That's worth quite a bit. He might have some writings that have made some royalty, but I don't think he's rich enough to hire bodyguards. That's awful. Sheila says performance, and then the repulsive and criminal go fling of his hosts. Little girls. God. Lana says, that's too bad, Steve W. Steve DeVore says, gotten to the point where I don't know who to believe in this administration, so I don't trust any of them. And let them prove to me as time passes to see what happens, and they're getting away with murder. They should all get their day in court and jail when proven guilty. Yes. And Arrow says, Moderna sounds like a maxi pad company. I think it sounds like a car, don't you? Steve says, yes. Avril Corey is a slugger and rising star who was once homeless. She is one of us. Stephen DeVore says, especially the kids. The more they talk, the more they incriminate themselves. Yes, it's amazing. Steve Wolfman says, Fauci got a lot of people killed by telling us not to wear masks in March. He did, but he was trying to help because he knew there was a shortage of masks, and he wanted the masks to be supplied to those who had to treat COVID-19 in hospitals. So I don't really blame him for that. The opinion at the time was that for people who were out in the open doing things like shopping and seeing people at restaurants and things like that, that masks would not be much help. That was the medical opinion at that time. Now that changed. It changed when the epidemiological information began to come in, and as people understood the airborne nature of COVID, which they did not understand at the start. So he did make certainly a costly mistake there by telling us not to wear masks back in March. It was probably also some of the political factors were in back of that. But he changed his tune as scientific opinion changed there too. So he was in line with scientific opinion. Kay says, how many are going to even trust any vaccine after all the BS? Well, that's going to be a problem. There are many people who are going to trust the vaccines, and there will be less death, okay, among them. And then other people will lag behind, okay, as usual. And there will be a lot of stories about how the vaccines are harmful. And there will be some harm, okay, that will be due to the vaccines, but, not near as much as all the crazy stories. And Mona asked, did Fauci say it exactly like that? I doubt that's why he's being threatened. Yeah, I doubt that too. I think he's probably being threatened by rightists because he's advocating for masks. Avril says, yes, we better save 30 to 40 bucks of our next COVID checks for that damn vaccine. I think that's going to be multi-dose vaccine. Okay, my understanding is it may take as many as 3 doses to protect you. And Lana says, but Dr. Campbell said there is a 15-minute test in Florida. He promised to follow up. Great. Avril says, I wonder if it came from Cuba. I think that some of the interferon treatments may be coming from Cuba, but they may be going, not be going from Cuba directly to here. And Kay says, Lana, if it is accurate, then it's exactly what we need. Steve said, Lonnie said exactly that. Then lately he admitted he lied. His excuse was he didn't want to run on masks that were needed by nurses and doctors. Okay, you can easily look it up. But I don't trust anything he says after that. Well, I think that's a problem. I think it's a problem when scientific people whose word you are supposed to trust, when they deliberately lie about something, even when they're lying for a higher purpose, you cannot trust them again. Because, of course, it's not you who's making the judgment about what is a higher purpose. Okay? It's them. Okay? So it's true. Once they lie, you cannot take anything they say at face value again. You cannot trust in them completely. Once they've lied to you once, they will lie to you again. Kay points out that many other doctors are saying the same thing, though. Yeah, that's the scientific consensus now at this point, and it's better to wear masks. And I trust the scientific consensus in this respect. We are masked, okay, when we go out, and we might not only wear a mask, but a face shield as well. Avril says, Steve Wolfbrand, common sense would tell you to cover your face anyway. I learned that just by watching Wuhan. Yeah. Steve says, new study predicts 300,000 by December. Well, that's pretty consistent with what I've been saying. If you recall, I was predicting 250,000 by election day. 300,000 by December, yeah, that's fairly consistent with that. But my understanding was the new study is a revision of what the University of Washington model has to say. So theirs is based on a model, and mine is just based on a guess. Hang on a second. I have something to show you. We had to go outside to see the chiropractor today.
And they hear you all right?
So this is how we looked. Of course, it's worse in here because we're not outdoors. And so my face shield is fogging up. Outdoors, I don't get this kind of fog. Anyway,
Take it off.
that's what was going on today. Okay, so here we are. We were masked and we had on the face shields. And that's what the kind of thing that the laboratory people at Kaiser are doing also. They have face shields and they also have their masks, either surgical masks, or the KN95 masks. Steve Wolfbrand says, of course, Lana. Stephen DeVore says, I'm scared to death every time I have to go out. I've never been like this, scared of something I can't see. But I know how I feel every day, not having had the cold or flu for decades. I'm prime meat for this new bug. It's waiting for me, and I'm doing everything I can so it won't find me. Stay safe, my friends. Yeah, we're doing everything we can, too. We're very careful when we go out. As soon as we come back home, first thing we do is wash up. And we wash a lot. And we have sanitizing wipes still. And we use those at home. When we're in the apartment building here, we go out and we have our masks on all the time. There's still quite a few people here who are not masked. And more of them are masked as time goes on. They see how many people are dying. So it's gotten through here, but there are still some who stubbornly prefer to go out of the house, but indoors in this building without masks on.
I think there's a few older people who don't have the money for masks and don't know where to get them and don't use a computer.
Right, but I'm not thinking now of some of the older people here. I'm thinking of some of the people in their 60s and 70s who should be able to mask, and they just don't do it. Okay, and Rashid Muhammad, welcome to you, Rashid, posts a YouTube link. I don't know what it's a link to. Some of you may want to check it out and see. Howell says, same, I use bleach constantly. Matt says, Steve Wolfbrand, you're right about that. Fauci, the Surgeon General, Secretary of HHS, they and others in the administration came out early against the masks. Fauci's latest story, they lied to protect supply of scarce resources from medical staff, is pure BS. The government could have easily exercised the Defense Production Act and provided ample masks for everyone in the United States. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Fauci's latest story was BS, because the government, Donald Trump, could have decided at that point that he wasn't going to exercise the DPA. And knowing that, maybe Fauci felt that he had to lie to protect the supply of scarce resources, for medical staff. Okay. In other words, we have to factor in, the direction that Trump had set for the government by that time. And Trump still is not exercising the DPA. Still is not. I mean, Trump is just incompetent. Okay, so I watched a doc about 1918 flu, and they knew that back then. My one grandpa died in that epidemic. And Rashid Mohammed has left the link. on behalf of Bernie Sanders. And so that's a link you certainly ought to look into. Steve Wolfbrand said, it seems to be getting closer and closer in my job, Stephen. We're freaking out. Everyone gets their temperature taken. Everyone in masks. Disinfection constantly. Stay safe, Steve Wolfbrand. Stay safe. Stay safe. Safe stay. And stay safe. Avril says, gargle with peroxide solution.
No. Yeah.
And Steve Wolfbrand says, it starts in the sinuses, so stop it there before it can get in the throat. Avril says, rosehip tea or vitamin C with rose hips for sinus health. Sinus health. We still have vitamin C with rose hips.
No.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I don't know where it is.
I do.
I'm not doing it.
Kay says, cranberry juice is a good vitamin C boost too. Steve says, vitamin C, D, and zinc. Vitamin D is very, very important according to John Campbell. He talks vitamin D all the time. Steve DeVore says, I hardly ever leave the house. I'm mean. I've had lazy streaks. But I'm going professional, and I probably should incorporate. What will you incorporate, Stephen DeVore? What kind of business are you incorporating? Romano says, Steve Wolfbrand, but do you know your blood type? And K. Clark says, K. Ride says, I'm not sure anymore, but I think mine is V-type. Romano says, sound is crisp. Thank you, Avro. Romano says, you have to be extra careful about catching it. Kay says, I do my best. Let me check my sound again to see that it has stayed steady. Congratulations to my system. Kay says, I do my best. Steve Wolfbrand says, at first, but none of us knew anyone affected by COVID. Now co-workers are sick and their family members are dying. A whole different situation. This shit is real. Don't fuck around with it. Yeah. Donald Trump just banned TikTok in 45 days. Fascist showing his teeth. Beware. He's setting things up for Microsoft to buy TikTok. Steve Wolfbrand says, I think I'm type A, but I'm not sure. We did it in high school chemistry class. I laugh out loud. Matt says, will Google and Facebook be next? Well, maybe they'll be kicked out of China in retaliation. And Steve Wolfbrand says, also susceptible to COVID, stay diligent. Says Avril Mono to Steve Wolfbrand. And Lanadell says, PA is called Pennsyltucky by us Jersey folks. Yeah, I've heard that. But I hear even more that the middle of Pennsylvania is like Alabama. Kay says, federal job guarantee would be a winner too. Yes, it would. Absolutely. Ohio is in the north coast of the Great Lakes, and it is Alabama, thanks to Kasich and many others. Steve says, so being called Alabama isn't a compliment? Who knew? Question mark. Are you kidding, Steve? And when I was a kid, the worst places in the United States were Alabama and Mississippi. We call the middle of Pennsylvania, Pennsyltucky. When I first got out of school with my PhD, Okay, I was offered a very nicely paying professorship at the University of Georgia, in Athens, Georgia. I did not take that opportunity. And the reason why was that I was sure that if I went to Athens, Georgia, that I would get killed in civil rights demonstrations, because I wouldn't be able to resist getting involved in them. I had always been involved in them, and I was afraid that if I went there, I was, just not going to make it. So I took a job in Buffalo, New York, instead, where it was safer to get involved in protests and demonstrations. And then Lana said, I saw that about Fauci. Not sure if it was Trump-induced, but he is, generally speaking, a good source of info. And I think it's terrible he's being threatened. I feel it's all the conspiracy crap that's bandied about. Yes, I agree with you, Lana. I think that's a balanced view of Fauci. Alva says, fast test. I don't know where it originated. Dr. Campbell said they're doing it in a town in Florida. I thought that Abbott Labs was working on a fast test, a 15-minute test, okay, where you could get the results in 15 minutes. Okay, not that it takes 15 minutes, it only takes a few seconds to get the test. But supposedly they could have the result within 15 minutes. Avril says, I don't know about a golf course in the bunker, but I bet he has a tanning bed and a pacifier. Jesus.
Oh, my God.
Jesus. And Kay says it was Barr's history of governing in California. Barr's history of governing in California? Okay. Are you talking Bill Barr? No. He was never governor of California. Ivor says, Chris Hedges said that. Lanadell said, Matthew, they didn't have the masks at the time, and Fauci could not have made the order to produce them. I'm sorry, I went blank on that. I mean, I scrolled down too fast on that again. Oh. Okay, so Lana says, they didn't have the masks at the time, and Fauci could not have made the order to produce them. Blaming Fauci for all this is off, in my opinion. I believe he was following Trump's lead. Yeah, I think that's right, Lana. Avril says, damn it, autocorrect. Chris Hedges said that. Yes, Chris Hedges did say that. And Avril says, yes, dying for the Dow. Autocorrect is my nemesis. And Steve Wolfbrand said, you ducking better believe it. Avril says, Steve Wolfbrand, duck, yeah. Avril said, but Biden is Mr. Sniffy. I assume that's supposed to mean that Biden is always sniffing, as if he's always taking in cocaine when he gets on television. I have to confess, I don't know if I really noticed that. In Russian, how do we need to get Jen, the Perelman, and Monique Worrell elected in Florida? I agree. We do need to get them elected. And Paula Jean in West Virginia, Steve Wolfbrand said. Yes, Paula Jean in West Virginia for the Senate. We really need her elected bad. She's going to be great.
Karen Koss. Karen Koss? Right. Is it Cass?
I know it's Bass.
Yes?
Yeah, Karen Bass.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, but if we elect Joe Biden, and if he selects Karen Bass, then she'll be vice president. But there's a scenario in which Karen Bass might be running for Senate, California, if Harris gets selected for vice president. Then it would be good if we elected Karen Bass. She would be a good candidate for the Senate. Howard says, boy, Republicans are highly pissed at Judge Roberts. Steve Wolfbrand says, which one of the rapists are you all voting for? And Matthew says, Lana Dell, if you took a timeline, in fact, his comments, they don't look good. He was saying in late January that the virus was a very low risk to the U.S. and that we had nothing to be worried about. Now, whether he was pushing the party line or whether he really believed it, he is still at fault. Rashid said, time for Greens and burners to occupy the Republican Party. Good point, Rashid. Avril says, were Whigs progressives? No, the Whigs were industrialists and financial people and land speculators. And altogether, the party was full of scoundrels. Full of scoundrels.
Into the Justice Party.
Oh, the Justice Party? I don't know what's happened to them. I think they're out there somewhere. And Steve says they work for Dolly Parton. Alvaro says, too bad Stephen McCalabrese isn't pushing for DT's impeachment harder. I had my hopes up. So Rachel Maddow had a story last night, I think it was, about how the Inspector General of the State Department found out that as soon as Trump got into office, he had the ambassador to the court of St. James go directly to the government, of the UK, and to try to get something, I forget what, but it was some important event in Great Britain, switched to his hotel in Scotland. So he tried to get the government of the UK to do a deal where he would personally benefit as soon as he got into office, in direct conflict with the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. I mean, that's enough grounds alone to impeach the SOB. Anthony Davis says, but political parties are forming new agendas. They're not at all what they once were when ethics were the fundamental thing. And Rashid said, People's Party will have 2024 candidates. Let's hope they have candidates by 2022, because they don't have candidates now. And they better start in an off year. So I'm not sure a presidential year is a good time to start. You need to start at lower levels first. Matt says, Matt, I don't like that. Still not an excuse to threaten his life and his daughters. Also, that is not why he's being threatened. And he's providing more good info than bad. I didn't say he was a saint. Are you saying he should be killed? No, I don't think Matt's saying that. I don't think Matt would ever say that. Steve DeVore says, we need to build on an existing platform and do something separately. But we need a strong progressive party running in every race.
Yes, Steve, if he's busy.
Huh?
Ask him if he's busy. Steve.
Which Steve? But Stephen Wolfram?
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, are you busy? Bonnie wants to know. Oh, I think it's actually Steve DeVore you wanted to ask that. but
Is
she
he the
said,
one that-
hey, we need to build on an existing platform
Yeah,
and do something separately, right?
yeah.
So Bonnie says to you, Steve DeVore, are you busy? Steve Wolfbrand said, Kenneth ran in my district. Yeah, that used to be DeVore's district also, Steve. She since has switched it. He got 25% of the vote, which was pretty impressive against Jimmy Gomez. It was pretty impressive. Okay, but he ran twice, and people should have voted for him because Jimmy Gomez ain't doing very much for him. They should have taken a chance, okay, on Kenneth. He would have been a firebrand in the House. Okay, and he would have joined the squad. I mean, he wouldn't have been a Democrat, but he still would have joined the squad. Alvaro says, voting has a lot of unfair age bias. For some reason, boomers like boomers only, and it's tragic. Boomers always liked only boomers only. Matt says, could the U.S. ever see a communist or socialist party resurgence like we saw in the 20s and 30s? We need a force to start to pull out the parties to the left. I think the People's Party will be much more socialist, okay, than the Democratic Party. I don't know if we're going to see a direct socialist party resurgence, but what is a new socialist party going to be like? I mean, the old socialist parties were for nationalizing a whole bunch of things and for taking industry into government hands. A new socialist party will not be like that. It will be more like a party that would only nationalize certain things. It would be a mixed economy party. Whatever it called itself, it would be a mixed economy party. And, these days, you even have a mixed economy in communist China. There's a mixed economy in Cuba. There's a mixed economy in the United States. Too much capitalism, far too much capitalism, but it is a mixed economy. And Bonnie keeps on pointing to her watch.
Unwatch.
Right, and I'm only at 10:51 in my comments, so I'm gonna zip through. I'm familiar with Lauren Steiner, right? She has a show called The Robust Opposition. I know. She's very active. And Maria Estrada, I know who that is too, and she's a local progressive hero. And I've learned about those people over a long period of time. And Steve says, Rodolfo is a pleasure known person as well, okay, as Kenneth. Yeah, Rodolfo has been on my show on a number of occasions, and I like him very much. And he and I fought inside of the Green Party. He was in the Green Party, and I was a special consultant to the platform committee, okay, of the Green Party. And we were arguing to change the platform to incorporate MMT perspectives. And we fought side by side for that, and we fought hard. And Anthony says, I read Bernie's book. It was pretty straightforward. But democratic socialism is not a four-letter thing. I know. It's really very innocuous.
Is it on LinkedIn?
Is Bernie's book on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
No, it's on Amazon.
Oh.
It's, one can buy Bernie's book. That's easy. Avril says, Trump got killed, not Fauci, because of the withholding of PPEs and equipment for political vitriol. Anthony Davis says, Andrew Cuomo was on spot with COVID-19 prevention in New York. He's a true trooper. I don't think he was spot on. I think he was slow, and he screwed up the nursing homes and created havoc, okay, in nursing homes. And he had a lot more deaths than he had to have in New York State. Things were outrageous in New York State for quite a while until the virus was somewhat contained. And even now, New York State is not doing, I don't think, as well as it should be doing. It's not doing too badly, though. It's at least, it's among the states where the reproduction rate of the COVID-19, okay, is less than 1, okay, at this point. It's true Cuomo had problems with New York, okay, and de Blasio, okay, and disagreements, and they both got involved in politics on this, and they both are to blame for that. But I don't have praise for either one of them when it came to COVID-19. They fucked it up. They should have shut down the city quick. But of course, nobody wanted to shut down the stock market. Nobody wanted to shut down, you know what was involved. Money, lots and lots and lots of money. Anthony Davis says, compared to what has happened in the southern states, New York had it going better than we ever had in Texas. Well, if you look at deaths per million in New York and deaths per million in Texas, Texas is still way ahead, okay, of New York. Now, I'm not saying that Texas has managed the crisis better than New York, because Texas, until recently, had a lot less to manage than New York. A lot less to manage. It was New York that had the hard time because it's New York, and New York City is in it, and all those people are coming in and out constantly. And Texas didn't have that. So Texas didn't have, okay, as much to manage, okay, as New York. So it had great advantages, and it blew those advantages. And undoubtedly, management in Texas at this point is worse than it is in New York State. I certainly agree with that. All of that. But that doesn't mean that Cuomo did a good job. If you want to know who did a good job, take a look at New Zealand sometime. Take a look at Taiwan sometime. Take a look at South Korea sometime. They know how to manage the crisis. We don't. Steve says, you need windshield wipers. Avro says, Luke, I am your father. Face shield. Avro says, can't do face shields in Florida humidity unless you stay inside. Steve says, Steve Wolford says, apparently Luke committed incest with Princess Leia. Nancy Davis, Smith & Wesson shooter glasses wrap around and do well outdoors. So, thank you, Anthony. That's good information. And Walmart sells a pack of 5 or 6 cloth masks that are made by Hanes, probably made out of the underwear. By Hanes. Kay says, still no Lysol spray to be found up here. Grrr.
Did they try Amazon? Does Amazon have it?
Have you checked to see whether Amazon still has any Lysol spray for sale? And Steve says, looks like the NRA is going down, laugh out loud. Well, I hope so, but it's still a long way until it goes down. And Kay says, over 100 brands of hand sanitizers now on the danger to use list. Yeah, I heard that. Donald Trump says, dragged his feet on PPEs, but ordered something like 100,000 body bags instead. Oh, God, that guy is so terrible. Okay, look, guys, it's 11:31. And it's time for me to get off. I'm sorry, I won't be able to do all of your comments tonight. They were very good comments.
I have a question and answer.
And I will look at them when I get off. And yeah, Rodolfo's a prince, Steve. He's a prince. He's a terrific young man. Good night, all. Good night, all. Thank you for coming. And I will see you again on Saturday. I will be off tomorrow. I have to take a scan. I have to get an MRI. Now it says Asia has COVID particle testing and decontaminating arches people can walk through. Okay, and we are buying coffins while Twitler golfs. That's what Avril said. Steve says good night, everyone. Margot says thanks again. Avril says good night, beatniks. Kay says thank you, Joe, and everybody. I love these discussions. Love you all.
Bye.
Good night, Lana. Lana says good night. So.